This is the story of the woman who cut off her husband's penis that left everyone shocked. Let's begin.
Lorena cut off her husband's penis.
I picked up the knife and I went back to the bedroom. I took the sheets off and I got him.
Raped her several times over a 3-day period.
Lorena took a large kitchen knife, cut off her sleeping husband's penis.
She turns around, marches right back into the bedroom, and just does the deed. I don't know how to say that for network television. She just...
Lorena Leonor Gallo, an Ecuadorian national, was born on June 18, 1970. When she was very young, she moved with her family to Venezuela. She lived in Caracas until 1988, and after finishing her education, she decided to move to the United States, arriving in a small town in Virginia. Lorena was filled with dreams and hopes, dazzled by the opportunities she saw in this world power, and quickly grasping what is well known as the American dream. A very good friend of her mother welcomed her and made her part of her family, which was a family with strong values, strictly controlled by Yana Bisutti. Additionally, Lorena worked directly for Yana, taking on the role of a nanny for one of Yana's younger children, for which she received a generous salary. Like any immigrant, Lorena quickly became interested in her legal status in the United States. Her mother's friend also assisted her in obtaining a student visa, which guaranteed her a legal stay in the country. Lorena wanted to grow both economically and professionally, so she trained as a manicurist, taking advantage of Yana's prosperous beauty salon. She began to put into practice everything she had learned in her manicure courses, becoming well-known and gaining many clients. Lorena came from an honorable and hardworking family. The example of rectitude, honesty, humility, and love from her parents was always her motivation and pride. As a young woman, she began to lead a more active social life. She saved money and began to have the desire to meet people and go to nightclubs, where, after so much work, she could begin to enjoy herself. On her first night out with friends she had made during her time in the United States, Lorena, following Yana's precise instructions on how to behave in nightclubs, was filled with various emotions and great expectations. She didn't know or even imagine that this night would change her life forever. You may be wondering why. Lorena and her friends dressed for the occasion and went to the nightclub. The party, the fun, and the sense of freedom that came with being young and eager to conquer the world dazzled Lorena and her friends upon arrival. In that place, which exceeded all her expectations, Lorena wondered if any of those handsome men she saw could be the love of her life. Without realizing it, destiny began to play a role in Lorena's life. While dancing and having an incredible time with her friends amidst drinks and conversations, a man approached the group, trying to greet everyone, but no one could hear him over the loud music. However, Lorena heard his strong voice, turned around, and saw a tall, thin man with green eyes and good musculature who left a strong impression on her at first sight. This young man, named John Bobbitt, was an American. His uncles took care of him and his siblings when he was 3 years old. His mother suffered from a mental breakdown and was unable to care for John and his siblings. John lived with his uncles, who were good people, very religious, and had excellent values that they passed on to him during his upbringing. However, the experiences with his mother left an indelible mark on him, creating some traumas and phobias that would eventually shape his personality. John chose a military career and enlisted in the Marine Corps. He quickly felt the rigors of military life, where everything was correct and the discipline and doctrine were very strict. He had to adapt to receiving orders and instructions from his superiors. This world quickly forged a strong and indomitable character in young John. Going back to that night, Lorena's beauty and sweetness equally captivated him. Without thinking much, he decided to conquer the woman he liked. His main objective that night was to capture Lorena's full attention, and he wouldn't rest until he achieved it. What John didn't know was that Lorena had to be home before midnight. Her friends, seeing her enthusiasm for John, reminded her of this. While she was enjoying herself and being dazzled by the soldier, the night quickly passed, allowing them to get to know each other before it was time to say goodbye. John quickly asked for Lorena's phone number, but at that time, she didn't have a phone and was embarrassed to give him Jana's home number. The young soldier told her he wouldn't rest until he somehow found her. And so, the night ended for both of them, and they said goodbye. That night, Lorena and her friends followed Jana's instructions to the letter, arriving home on time. While lying in bed, Lorena thought she wouldn't see John again, but she couldn't have been more wrong. The first night after meeting, John managed to call her, which excited Lorena even more. Like a true gentleman, John complimented her and promised to keep seeing her because he wanted to be close to her. It didn't take long for John to formally court her, meeting with Jana, who acted as Lorena's mother, and set the rules for their courtship, pleading with them not to disappoint her. John assured Jana that his intentions were good and that he would never harm the woman he considered the great love of his life. Jan made it clear that if he met the conditions proposed for the courtship, he would be welcome in her home. 10 months later, John surprised Lorena on a fun day at the pool, asking her to be his wife with the traditional engagement ring. Lorena, dazzled by John's professed love, quickly accepted the proposal. Thus, on June 18, 1989, with Lorena having been in the United States for just a year and a month, she couldn't have imagined this, even in her wildest dreams. That day, as you can see, she was also celebrating her birthday, making the celebration doubly special. From that ceremony onward, Lorena would be known as Lorena Bobbitt, legally and traditionally taking John's surname. However, what began as a fairy tale soon turned into a nightmare. One afternoon, while she was serving him soup, John directed his first insult against her roots. John considered it too cold and called her an Indian, criticizing her for serving such a thing to an American, while disparaging Lorena's Latin and indigenous roots. She couldn't believe what was happening, and responded that she was his wife and deserved respect. The situation escalated that day, leading to mutual insults and physical aggression, but they eventually calmed down, and John tried to apologize, explaining he had had a very bad day. This was the beginning of the end of tranquility and love in their relationship. John repeatedly broke his promise, and these episodes of abuse and violence became increasingly severe and audible to the neighbors, making them a couple that generated concern in the community. John's escalating violence trapped Lorena in this cycle of abuse, leaving her unable to escape and filled with fear. As time flew by, the couple's relationship deteriorated further. John basically treated Lorena as his slave, not allowing her to go out with friends, especially if there were men among them. By 1993, the abuse was evident to all their friends and acquaintances. They advised Lorena to end the toxic relationship, fearing for her safety, as similar cases had ended very badly during that time. On Friday, June 18, 1993, Lorena turned 23 and also marked her 4th wedding anniversary. That day, John met up with a good friend and decided to drink beers in several bars, while Lorena stayed home, calmly going to bed when her husband didn't return. No one could have imagined that an unprecedented act of violence would occur that night, escalating to a level that would leave a lasting mark on the world. That night, John arrived home lustful but rough, wanting to have sex with Lorena, who refused. This unleashed an incredible rage in John, and despite Lorena's resistance, he succeeded in his assault, raping his wife. This wasn't the first time John had behaved this way, abusing Lorena. John was highly attracted to rough and violent sex, expressing that it excited him, while Lorena simply cried. He repeatedly achieved his goal and, as on all previous occasions, fell into a deep sleep afterward. What happened next? No one could have imagined. Minutes after the abuse, Lorena got out of bed, went to the kitchen to quench her thirst, and while drinking water, she looked at a set of sharp knives used for cutting meat and poultry. The shiny long blade and the comfortable wooden handle caught her attention. Without thinking, she grabbed the knife and silently returned to the bedroom. John lay there fast asleep, as he always did after his violent acts. But Lorena had had enough of the abuse. and was determined to change her situation forever. In her testimony, Lorena stated that she simply took the knife with determination, went to the bedroom, carefully lifted the sheet, and, without hesitation, cut it off. She grabbed John's reproductive organ with one hand and made a perfect surgical cut. John's scream woke up the entire neighborhood, shocking everyone. Meanwhile, Lorena ran out of the house, leaving a trail of blood, got into her car, and drove away as fast as she could, determined never to return to the nightmare of her married life. While driving and regaining her composure, she realized she still had something in her hand, preventing her from steering properly. It was the severed part of her husband's organ. Panicking, she threw it out of the window, symbolizing all the abuse she had endured. Lorena continued driving until she reached Jana's house, desperately explaining what had happened. Realizing the severity of the situation, they decided to call the police. Meanwhile, at their home, John wrapped himself in the bedsheet to stop the bleeding, and fearing for his life, ran to the guest room to wake his friend Robert. He urgently told Robert to take him to Prince William Hospital, which was the nearest hospital. Upon arrival, the doctors, despite their experience, couldn't hide their shock at John's condition. They immediately contacted Dr. J. Sim, a urologist and microsurgeon, and Dr. David Berman, a plastic surgeon. The doctors evaluated the situation and requested the location of the severed part of John's organ to attempt reattachment. To understand what had happened, the police, along with other authorities, began searching for the severed part and gathering information from Lorena. Lorena provided the approximate location where she had thrown the organ. With this information, the police managed to find the missing part, placed it on ice, and rushed it to the hospital in a container ironically meant for hot dogs, an image that circulated worldwide. While authorities pieced together the events puzzle, they also found the knife Lorena had used and took her into custody at the police station. Thus began the trial of that shocking and even macabre night, where a determined woman took action to end a marriage filled with suffering and give a definitive lesson to her husband. During the trial, Lorena testified, saying, "Everyone focuses on John's severed organ, but no one talks about the years of abuse I endured. Imagine having to endure a person who abused me whenever he wanted, until the day I couldn't take it anymore, and did what I did." The trial became a media circus. People took sides, debating the justice and morality of her actions. Given the continuous abuse she had endured throughout her marriage, Lorena's temporary insanity and self-defense ultimately led to her acquittal and declaration of innocence. The Bobbitts legally divorced in 1995. The case's fame and global attention persisted, making it a worldwide sensation. Lorena Bobbitt's story is one of survival, a heartbreaking cry against domestic violence. It also marked a turning point in gender violence awareness and medical advancements, as John's reattachment surgery was a significant success, lasting nearly 10 hours and representing an incredible medical milestone. Her life, marked by that event, became a symbol of the fight for women's dignity and safety worldwide. Lorena founded the Lorena Gallo Foundation, dedicated to providing opportunities for women victims of domestic violence, which continues to fight for this cause to this day. The Bobbitt story regained prominence in 2022, with several interviews and a Netflix documentary. Today, Lorena is a successful woman who continues her work as a stylist and, through her foundation, addresses all issues related to domestic violence. She conducts talks and provides guidance on overcoming violence, focusing particularly on helping the Latin community with the premise that assault and aggression do not discriminate and can destabilize anyone, regardless of age, race, or gender, if they do not receive proper education on the subject. Lorena's story reminds us of the importance of listening to and supporting abuse victims, as well as continuing to fight for a world where such acts of violence are unacceptable. This concludes the captivating story that brought about significant changes in the fields of domestic and gender violence, as well as medicine, following John Bobbitt's successful surgery. We invite you to subscribe and like our content so that we can continue to bring you these stories objectively and truthfully. Until next time, friends.